They laughed when the attorney read the last will and testament of Walter Amos Holloway. They laughed in the small wood-paneled law office on Elkhorn Avenue in Estes Park, Colorado. They laughed at the long walnut conference table in a way you can only laugh at family. Vivienne Holloway-Chandler, 33 years old, corporate real estate partner at Vale Rockford Chandler in downtown Denver, walked out of that law office on the 8th of October, 2026 with the Holloway family cattle ranch in the Poudre River Valley, the Vail ski house, the Vanguard portfolio, the Range Rover, and the vintage Land Cruiser and the 3 horses at the ranch stables. $9,200,000 in inheritance to the good. Meredith Holloway, 25 years old, third-shift baker at the Red Feather Lakes Bakery in Larimer County, Colorado, walked out with the Holloway Silversmith Cabin on Blackwater Creek Road, a 127-year-old timber-framed heritage Colorado Rocky Mountain silversmith's cabin that had been abandoned for 11 winters and was believed by everyone in Larimer County to be worth exactly nothing. 12 days later, when she lifted a single wide chestnut floorboard at the dead center engraver's bench spot of that cabin, the Smithsonian National Museum of American History and the Library of Congress American Folklife Center and the University of Colorado Boulder Norland Library Special Collections and the History Colorado Center jointly wired her $6,200,000 before the end of the month. Because hidden in the fieldstone cellar of that cabin was a 4-generation Larimer County family secret that nobody outside the Holloway Silversmith Cabin on Blackwater Creek Road had known about for 92 years. And by the time the wire cleared, Meredith would understand that her grandfather had given her the only share that mattered. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Meredith Holloway was 25 years old. The cold October morning, she buried her grandfather in the small Blackwater Ridge Methodist Cemetery in Larimer County, Colorado. She stood alone near the back of a small crowd of 20 or so people in her only black dress beneath an old, dark navy wool peacoat she had bought at the Fort Collins thrift store 4 winters ago. Her long, ash-brown hair with sun-lightened chestnut streaks was pulled back in a single loose braid down her back beneath a black knit watch cap. Her deep gray-green eyes were tired and quiet. She did not cry. She had not been able to cry in the 3 days since the phone call. The pain sat too deep for the tears to find their way out. Walter Amos Holloway had been 93 years old when he died in his sleep on the 2nd of October, 2026, in the small back bedroom of the Holloway family ranch house on the Poudre River. He had been the only father she had ever really known. Her mother, Ellen, had died of ovarian cancer when Meredith was 7 years old. Her father, Ellery Walter Holloway, had died in a Wyoming oil field accident when Meredith was 15. Vivienne, 10 years older, had already been in Denver by then, a first-year corporate real estate associate. Meredith had spent her entire adolescence between the ages of 15 and 18 at the Holloway Ranch house on the Poudre River, alone with Walter. Walter had made her breakfast. Walter had driven her to Poudre High School in Fort Collins in his old '97 Ford F-150. Walter had sat beside her at parent-teacher nights. Walter had taught her to shoe a horse and clean a rifle and read a topographic map and drink coffee black. Walter had been the one who had shown her the old Holloway Silversmith Cabin on Blackwater Creek Road on the 16th of April, 2020. She had been 19 years old. She had signed a piece of paper that day at a heart pine table in a fieldstone cellar beneath the cabin floor. She had not known what she was signing. She had only known that her grandfather was asking her and that Walter Holloway did not ask her for very much. Now, Walter was gone. 2 days after the graveside service, Meredith sat in a cracked leather chair at the long walnut conference table in the small wood-paneled law office of Mr. Cyrus Whitcomb on Elkhorn Avenue in Estes Park, Colorado. Mr. Whitcomb was 77 years old, silver-haired, slow-spoken, with round wire-rim reading glasses on a thin black cord around his neck. He had been Walter Holloway's attorney for 39 years. He had also been the only other person in Larimer County who had known about the sealed chestnut trapdoor beneath the fieldstone cellar floor of the Holloway Silversmith Cabin on Blackwater Creek Road. Across the walnut table sat Meredith's older sister Vivienne Holloway-Chandler in a black tailored blazer over a charcoal cashmere turtleneck, her Cartier watch catching the pale October light. Vivienne was 33, tall, sharp-featured, blonde-highlighted straight hair, pulled back in a smooth chignon, ice-blue eyes. Beside her sat her husband, Blake Chandler, 34, partner at a downtown Denver commercial real estate development firm, in a slate gray wool suit, tapping his phone against the walnut every 10 seconds without noticing he was doing it. Mr. Whitcomb opened a manila folder slowly. "This is the last will and testament of Walter Amos Holloway," he said, "executed in this office on the 3rd of November, 2022. He turned a page. "To my eldest granddaughter, Vivienne Ellen Holloway-Chandler of Cherry Creek, Denver, Colorado, I leave the Holloway family cattle ranch in the Poudre River Valley, 620 acres, together with the ranch house, the barn, the cattle at present count, the 3/4 horses in the stables, all agricultural equipment and appurtenances. I also leave her the Vail Resort ski residence at Beaver Creek, the Vanguard investment portfolio at present value approximately $3,400,000, the 22 Range Rover, and the 1996 Toyota Land Cruiser." Vivienne let out a small, satisfied breath. Mr. Whitcomb turned another page. "To my youngest granddaughter, Meredith Ellery Holloway of Red Feather Lakes, Colorado," he said, slower now, "I leave the property located at 1840 Blackwater Creek Road, Larimer County, Colorado, the Holloway Silversmith Cabin, 1 1/10 of an acre, together with the building, the fieldstone cellar, and everything that is within." There was a long silence. Vivienne broke it. She laughed. She actually laughed. The sound bounced off the wood paneling. "Grandpa," Vivienne said, shaking her head slowly, "you did not." Blake looked up from his phone for the first time. "He did," said Mr. Whitcomb evenly. "That old cabin," Vivienne said. "That old cabin," Mr. Whitcomb said. "That cabin has not been occupied since the winter of 2015. The pipes burst that Christmas. Grandpa closed it up. I remember. He said he was going to let the county tear it down." "He did not let the county tear it down." Vivienne shook her head slowly and turned toward Meredith and gave her sister a small, pitying smile. "Well, Mary," Vivienne said, "congratulations. You are the proud owner of a Larimer County teardown. If you want any help finding a demolition contractor, I know a guy in Loveland who will do it for $6,000. I'll cover it as a gift." Meredith said nothing. Blake laughed once, short. $6,000, he said. "That's about what a couple truckloads of scrap chestnut is worth these days." Vivienne stood up first, then Blake. Blake was already on his phone again, talking to someone about a Cherry Creek closing. They did not say goodbye to Meredith. The office door closed behind them. The silence returned. Mr. Whitcomb took off his reading glasses. He folded the reading glasses carefully and rested them atop the manila folder. He looked at Meredith across the walnut table. "Your grandfather told me you would not cry," he said gently. "I am not crying," Meredith said. He nodded slowly. He pushed back his chair, rose carefully, and went down the hallway of the law office for nearly a minute. When he came back, he was carrying a single small hand-painted wooden sign, 10 inches by 15 inches. The painted lettering, "Holloway Silversmith Cabin Esturdert 1898," in deep walnut on a pale cream ground, weathered, hung on the paneled wall behind his desk for so many years that the brass picture wire on the back had darkened into the cream paint. "Your great-grandfather Amos painted that sign in 1898, Mr. Whitcomb said. "My father bought it at his 1953 estate sale for $2.50. My father was 11 years old. He hung it in his own law office in Estes Park for 42 years. When he retired in 1995, he passed it to me. Your grandfather, Walter, never asked for it back. He just wanted to know it was safe. I have been keeping it safe for you." Meredith picked up the wooden sign. She ran her thumb slowly along the worn edge of the cream-painted lettering. She did not cry. She placed the sign back on the walnut table. Mr. Whitcomb slid a heavy old iron key on a tarnished brass ring across the walnut. "That fits the front door padlock of the cabin," he said quietly. "Your grandfather gave it to me the day after he came home from the hospital in April. He said when you came for it, I should put it in your hand and not in anyone else's." He also slid a single folded sheet of cream cotton rag paper sealed at the fold with deep blue wax. The blue wax seal had Walter Holloway's hand-cut WAH monogram pressed into it. Meredith's name was written across the front of the folded letter in Walter's slow, careful Colorado hand. "He wrote that the same morning," Mr. Whitcomb said. "The morning he came home from the hospital. He handed it to me 2 weeks before he died, and he asked me to give it to you the day you read the will." Meredith picked up the letter carefully. She tucked it into the inside pocket of her dark navy peacoat against her chest. She would open it that night, alone in the front seat of her old Dodge Ram pickup somewhere on the long drive up County Road 74 toward Red Feather Lakes. She would not open it here. She thanked Mr. Whitcomb. She gathered up the wooden sign and the iron key in one hand. She walked out of the law office and down the wooden front steps to the curb where her Dodge Ram was parked. A 1993 Ram in faded slate blue, the truck she had bought at the Fort Collins auction house in 2020 for $2,100 when Walter had gently insisted she needed something that would start in a Colorado winter. She laid the wooden sign flat on the bench seat next to her. She put the iron key on the brass ring into the breast pocket of her peacoat. She started the engine. She drove north out of Estes Park on Highway 7, then west through the winding forested hills of the Roosevelt National Forest up County Road 74, past the frost-tipped meadows of the upper Poudre River Valley, past the tall stands of lodgepole pine and ponderosa, the way her grandfather had driven her 22 Octobers of her life. When the paved road gave way to gravel 4 miles east of Red Feather Lakes on Blackwater Creek Road, Meredith slowed the Ram and rolled down the window. The air smelled of wood smoke and October pine needles. Cool and thin and old. 2 miles up Blackwater Creek Road, where the road bent north around a stand of bare aspens and the long line of a hand-laid Larimer County stone wall, she saw it for the first time in her adult life. It was a 127-year-old timber-framed Colorado Rocky Mountain Silversmith cabin on the north slope of the Blackwater Ridge, 1.5 stories. Weathered silver-gray heart pine clapboards from 127 Colorado high country winters. Hand-hewn Douglas fir corner posts visible, a steep cedar shake roof streaked with October frost and missing perhaps 18 shakes. A small covered front porch listing slightly to the south side, a tall, narrow-paned, north-facing engraver's light window along the visible side wall, salt-glazed and dust-darkened. A short riverstone chimney rising from the back, a hand-forged iron hasp on the worn cedar front door with a heavy iron padlock hanging through it. Vines had climbed halfway up the north wall over the 11 winters. A single tall, bare aspen tree beside the porch had thrown a heavy layer of gold leaves across the sagging porch boards. The Holloway Silversmith Cabin looked unmistakably abandoned, but it was structurally intact. It was waiting. Meredith pulled the Ram off Blackwater Creek Road onto the narrow dirt track that ran up to the front of the cabin. She killed the engine. The pale October afternoon light of the Rocky Mountain foothills caught the silver-gray heart pine clapboards and held them in cold, high-altitude gold. She stayed in the cab a little longer, the heavy iron key held tight inside her closed right fist. She stepped down out of the truck. She walked up the worn cedar plank front step. She fit the heavy iron key into the heavy iron padlock. The padlock turned. The padlock fell open in her hand. She lifted the hasp off the staple. She pushed open the worn cedar plank front door. The smell of the cabin was the smell of beeswax polish and hand-oiled leather and pine pitch and hot sterling silver, and the ghost of Walter's pipe tobacco. It was the smell of Walter's hands from her earliest memories as a small girl at the ranch. The pale October light from the tall, narrow, north-facing engraver's light window lay across the wide plank chestnut workshop floor in a single long band of cool Rocky Mountain afternoon light. Walter's silversmithing tools were still on their pegs along the north wall. His hand-forged small hammers, his engraving burins, his silver marking punches, his crosspeen chasing hammers, his small brass and boxwood-handled files. His hardpine engraver's workbench, with its heavy black hand-cut steel engraver's block, stood at the front of the room beneath the north window. His small anvil of black iron sat on the bench. His copper alloy crucible for melting silver still hung on its iron hook above the bench where Walter had melted silver stock every Saturday morning for 58 years. His green cloth silverwork tray still lay on the bench under a fine layer of 11 winters' dust. Meredith unlaced her brown leather work boots on the worn cedar threshold and pulled them off. She pulled off her wool socks. She walked barefoot into the front room in cuffed dark gray wool work pants and her heavy oatmeal cream wool cardigan and her dark navy peacoat unbuttoned, her ash-brown braid quiet down her back. The wide plank chestnut workshop floor was polished gold by 127 years of standing silversmith's boots. Warm spots and cool spots of the chestnut floor met her bare soles as she walked. She felt the slight shallow groove worn into the chestnut at the dead center engraver's bench spot before she saw it. The chestnut at that place had worn a quarter-inch below the surrounding boards. 127 years of silversmith's boots standing at the hardpine engraver's workbench had worn the chestnut down a quarter of an inch. She knelt at the dead center engraver's bench spot. With her right hand, she traced along the edge of the wide chestnut floorboard closest to the hardpine workbench. Her fingertips located a small iron ring seated flush in the chestnut along the inside edge of that board. She slipped her index finger through the iron ring and drew straight upward. The wide chestnut floorboard came up cleanly. Beneath the floorboard was a fieldstone-lined cavity 3 feet deep, set into the original 1898 granite footing of the cabin. At the bottom of the cavity, cradled on a folded square of oilcloth, sat a small tin box the size of a brick. The lid was stamped Amos, 1898 in worn block letters. Meredith lifted the tin box out of the cavity with both hands. She rested the tin box on the polished chestnut floor beside her knee. Her deep gray-green eyes were wide. She did not cry. She raised the small iron latch on the front of the tin box. She lifted the lid. Inside the tin box, wrapped in 3 layers of oiled cotton rag paper, were 238 gold coins. Beneath the gold coins was a small leather-bound 1898 silversmith's notebook, the cover stamped in dull gold Amos Holloway, Silversmith Cabin 1898, Methodology. Beneath the notebook was a leather-bound original Holloway Silversmith Cabin annual ledger. Beneath the ledger was a sepia photograph dated 1898 showing a young master silversmith in a leather apron with a small girl of perhaps 4 years old standing beside him at the engraver's block. Beneath the photograph was a yellowed Larimer County Herald newspaper clipping from December of 1933, with the front page headline, "Mystery Colorado Silversmith Restores 47 Families' Heritage." Silver, no name, no charge. Beneath the newspaper clipping was a small, folded, oiled leather wallet, holding a set of 4 brass and copper Great War veterans Colorado National Guard silver identification tags dated 1917, engraved in Amos Holloway's hand for 4 young Larimer County men who had shipped out to France that spring. 2 feet south of the tin box cavity, a section of the wide plank chestnut roughly 3 feet by 4 sat flush with the floor, only a shade darker than the boards around it. At the very center of that faintly darker patch, all but hidden in the chestnut grain, rested 2 more flush-set iron rings. A trap door. She slid her fingers through the iron rings and lifted. The trap door was heavy hand-cut chestnut, 3 inches thick. She set the trap door flat down against the chestnut floor beside her. The opening beneath the trap door was a wax-sealed seam, 8 perfect circular deep red wax seals along the inside edge, each with a small crossed engraving burin and silver marking punch pressed into them. Walter had wax-sealed the trap door before he had died. He had marked the seal with his silversmith's mark 8 times. He had never come back to break those seals. He had left that for Meredith. She felt for the latch beneath the seals. The latch released. The 8 deep red wax seals cracked cleanly in sequence as she raised the inner trap door. A short, narrow chestnut stair, 6 steps, descended into a low-ceilinged fieldstone cellar 14 feet by 20 beneath the workshop floor. Meredith went down the 6 chestnut steps in her bare feet. The cellar floor was laid in worn Colorado granite. The walls were hand-laid Rocky Mountain fieldstone, 2.5 feet across at the thickest. The cellar smelled of hand-oiled leather and pine pitch and cured silver polish and the faint green metal tang of aged bronze. A single brass kerosene lantern hung from a chestnut beam at the center of the cellar, above a long heart pine work table. Walter had left the lantern hanging there. She took a long wooden match from the brass cup beside the lantern, drew it against the lantern base, and lit the wick. The warm, amber gold of the kerosene lamplight caught the cellar and held it. Along all 4 walls of the cellar, on heart pine shelves built into the fieldstone, 380 pieces of hand-restored heritage Colorado silver rested in cotton-lined cedar trays on the upper and middle shelves. Each cedar tray was labeled in Walter's slow, careful Colorado hand. Hampton Family Bridal Bit, Livermore, restoration begun 1982. Delacroix Family Spur Set, Livermore, restoration begun 1990. Colorado Volunteer Cavalry Company G identification tag, Fort Collins, restoration begun 2003. 380 pieces of Larimer County heritage silver, waiting. On the lower shelves, lined up in a single continuous row, were 47 leather-bound original Holloway Silversmith Cabin annual ledgers, 1898 through 2025, gold embossed in Colorado school spinework. Holloway Silversmith Cabin annual ledger, 1898, 1899, 1900. The ledgers ran the length of the wall, turned the corner, and continued along the next. At the center of the heart pine work table beneath the kerosene lantern was a single hand-illustrated silversmith's manual. The cover was stamped, "The Methodology of Heritage. Rocky Mountain, Silversmithing and Engraving, A.E. Holloway, 1898. The manual was 68 pages. Every page was hand-illustrated. Every measurement was Amos's hand. It was the complete methodology of heritage Colorado silversmithing in one bound book. Beside the manual were 12 large sheets of cotton drafting paper folded once and tied with a deep red ribbon. She untied the ribbon and unfolded the first sheet. It was a hand-drawn map of Larimer County in Amos Holloway's 1898 hand, with 187 small black ink dots, and the name of a family beside each dot. The complete registry of every Larimer County family that had brought heritage silver to the Holloway Silversmith Cabin in 1898. Beside the 12 sheets at the head of the table was a single folded sheet of cream cotton rag paper, dated April 17, 1933, in Amos Holloway's careful, slow Colorado hand. I, Amos Ellery Holloway, Master Silversmith of the Holloway Silversmith Cabin on Blackwater Creek Road in Larimer County, Colorado, on this the 17th day of April 1933, freely promise the 47 Larimer County mountain families whose heritage silver I have this winter received in restoration without payment, that I will deliver to each family by the close of 1933. A fully restored heritage piece, bridle bits, spurs, saddle silver buckles, ceremonial silver, and Great War Veterans identification pieces at no charge. So long as my hands can still hold an engraving burin and my crucible can still melt sterling, no Larimer County family shall lose the heritage silver of their forebears for want of the cost of restoration. So help me, Almighty God. The single sheet was signed at the bottom, Amos Ellery Holloway, 17th April 1933. Below Amos's signature, in 3 more slow, careful hands, were 3 more undertaking notations. I, Walter Amos Holloway, on the 17th day of April 1948, at the age of 16, under the hand of my father Amos, undertake the same promise upon the death of my father. I, Ellery Walter Holloway, on the 17th day of April 1972, at the age of 15, under the hand of my father Walter, undertake the same promise upon the death of my father. I, Meredith Ellery Holloway, on the 17th day of April 2020, at the age of 19, under the hand of my grandfather Walter, undertake the same promise upon the death of my grandfather. The 4th signature was her own. Her grandfather had brought her to this cellar on the 17th of April 2020. She had signed the promise that day. She had been 19 years old. She had not known what the promise meant. She had not known what she was signing. She had only known that her grandfather was asking her, and that Walter Holloway did not ask her for very much. She sat at the heart pine work table in the warm gold of the kerosene lamplight for a long time. Outside the cabin, the pale October afternoon turned into the deep, cold blue Rocky Mountain evening. The kerosene lamp burned steady. 4 generations of Holloway Silversmiths had signed the promise. Amos in 1933, Walter in 1948, Ellery in 1972, Meredith in 2020. 92 years. The promise had been kept for 92 winters. The promise had been the trade. The trade had been the promise. That night, in the small back study of the Holloway ranch house on the Poudre River, Meredith sat at Walter's heavy dark oak roll-top desk and slid the roll-top up. She set the folded letter Mr. Whitcomb had given her at the center of the worn olive-green leather writing pad. She split the deep blue wax with the corner of her thumbnail. The wax cracked clean. She unfolded the letter. My Mary. I'm not a man of words. I'm sorry I was not a man of more words for you. Your grandmother Cordelia was the word keeper of this family, and when we lost her back in '91, I think most of the words went with her. I'm writing this on the 18th of April, 2026, the morning I came home from Poudre Valley Hospital 6 months before the doctor is going to tell me what I already know. Your great-grandfather Amos chose me as the keeper of the trade in 1948 when I was 16 years old, in the same fieldstone cellar where I took you on the 17th of April 2020. I did not understand what the trade was. I did not understand for 50 years. I understood the trade only on the last day your great-grandfather was alive. He was at the cabin. He was 87 years old. I was 20. He gave me his father's engraving burin from the front pocket of his leather apron. He told me, Walter, the trade is the hand that learned, the hand that teaches, and the hand that comes after. I have spent 72 years since your great-grandfather died trying to be the hand that teaches. I've spent every year of that 72 watching your sister Vivienne grow into a woman who does not know that the Holloway Silversmith Cabin still exists. She has not asked. I have not told her. I have spent the last 10 years watching you grow into a young woman who knew the cabin existed without ever being told that it did. You used to ask me, when you were small, what the smell of hot sterling was. I never told you. I am sorry. I should have told you. I am leaving your sister the ranch, and the Vail house, and the portfolio, and the Range Rover. She will sell what she can. She will divide what she cannot sell. But this cabin, my Mary, your sister cannot sell. This cabin your sister cannot divide. This cabin is yours. I have left you what was your great-grandfather's and what was his father's before him. I have left you a cabin on Blackwater Creek Road that has been waiting 11 years for a hand that knew the trade. I have left you a promise that is 92 years old. I have left you 4 generations of Larimer County mountain families who never knew which family had restored their heritage silver. I have left you the only share that mattered. If I had been a man of more words, I would have told you all of this when you were old enough to understand. I was not a man of more words, forgive me. Just bring me coffee when you can, my girl, the way you used to. Just bring me coffee. Your grandfather, Walter Amos Holloway, April 18th, 2026. Meredith laid the letter flat on the worn olive green leather writing pad. She did not cry. She had not cried at the graveside service. She had not cried in the law office. She had not cried in the fieldstone cellar. She did not cry at the roll-top desk. She had been standing at the dead center engraver's bench spot of the cabin, the warm chestnut underneath the soles of her feet when the not-crying place had set itself in her. She would carry that place for the rest of her life. She slid the letter back into Walter's heavy oak drawer. She walked down the back hallway of the ranch house, through the kitchen, out to the back porch. The mid-October Larimer County night was cold and clear. The stars above the Poudre River valley were sharp. She stood on the back porch in Walter's old wool ranch coat, and she said, into the cold, dark, Rocky Mountain air, "Thank you, Grandpa. I will engrave again." She drove down Blackwater Creek Road the next morning at first light. She lit the wood stove. She put a coffee pot on to brew on the iron range. She wrapped a soft cotton cloth around 2 fingers and dipped the cloth into the bowl of beeswax polish on the heart pine shelf, and she began to polish the worn heart pine engraver's bench in long, slow strokes. The deep, golden chestnut grain of 127 years of silversmith's tool strokes and burren scratches emerged from the cotton cloth like a face surfacing under water. She worked the bench for 3 hours. That afternoon, she carried Walter's old cherrywood drafting board down to the cabin in the bed of the ram. She rested it on the heart pine table at the back of the workshop. She composed a letter by hand on the cream cotton rag paper in her own slow, careful Colorado script. She wrote the letter to Dr. Prescott Farrow, Senior Curator of Heritage American Silversmithing, Smithsonian National Museum of American History, Washington, D.C. She left her own name off the return envelope entirely. She put down only Holloway Silversmith Cabin, Blackwater Creek Road, Larimer County, Colorado. She drove down into Red Feather Lakes and slid the letter through the brass slot of the post office. 12 days later, on a cold, bright Colorado morning of early November, a climate-controlled archive van from Washington pulled up the dirt track and stopped in front of the Holloway Silversmith Cabin. 3 more vehicles followed. Following it up the dirt track came a second van from the Library of Congress American Folklife Center, a sedan from the University of Colorado Boulder Norland Library Special Collections, a truck from the History Colorado Center in Denver. Dr. Prescott Farrow from the Smithsonian stepped out of the first van, 66 years old, iron-gray hair, in a long charcoal wool overcoat. He had spent his professional life looking for a Colorado silversmith's cabin he had read about in a single line of a 1933 Larimer County Herald article when he was a graduate student 43 years earlier. Dr. Vernon Ainsworth from the Library of Congress American Folklife Center, a soft-spoken Caucasian man of 63 in a heavy charcoal wool overcoat, had never expected to stand on the chestnut floor of Amos Holloway's Silversmith Cabin on Blackwater Creek Road. Dr. Adelaide Merriweather from the University of Colorado Boulder, Norland Library Special Collections, a stately black woman of 71 in a long dark burgundy wool coat, had spent 12 years looking for the Holloway Silversmith Cabin through Boulder's Western Craft Oral History Archives and had given up in 2017. Dr. Aldous Prescott from the History Colorado Center was 64 and the great-nephew of a Larimer County rancher who had been one of the 4 young men, whose Great War silver identification tags Amos Holloway had engraved in 1917. He was the founding director of the History Colorado Center's Heritage Rocky Mountain Silversmithing Preservation Program, founded 22 years earlier on the strength of a small, anonymous 1973 founding gift. He did not know until that morning that the anonymous founding gift had come from the silversmith who had made his great-uncle's Great War identification tags. Meredith met them at the cabin door in her heavy oatmeal cream wool cardigan and a canvas apron tied at her waist. She showed them the workshop. She showed them the heart pine engraver's workbench. She showed them Walter's silversmithing tools on the north wall. She walked them down the chestnut stair into the fieldstone cellar. She set the kerosene lantern on the heart pine work table. She watched their faces when they saw the 380 pieces of heritage Larimer County silver. She watched their faces when they saw the 47 leather-bound annual ledgers. She watched their faces when they read Amos's methodology. She watched their four faces closely as each of them read through the 92-year-old promise. Dr. Merriweather from CU sat down on the chestnut stool at the heart pine table when she read the promise. Dr. Ainsworth from the Library of Congress had to step back up the chestnut stair and stand in the upstairs workshop for 10 minutes. Dr. Prescott from History Colorado put his face in his hands. That afternoon at the heart pine work table in the cellar, in the warm gold of the kerosene lamplight, the four institutions made their joint offer. The Smithsonian would acquire the 1898 Methodology Manual and the 12 sheets of the Larimer County Families Register, accessioned to the National Museum of American History Permanent Collection. The Library of Congress American Folklife Center would acquire the 47 original Holloway Silversmith Cabin annual ledgers. The University of Colorado Boulder Norland Library Special Collections would acquire the 380 pieces of heritage Larimer County silver in trust for ongoing restoration. The History Colorado Center would receive the original 92-year-old promise on perpetual loan, on the condition that the History Colorado Center's Heritage Rocky Mountain Silversmithing Preservation Program would underwrite the Holloway Silversmith Cabin's ongoing operation and the continuation of the promise. The joint offer came to $6,200,000. Meredith accepted the offer. The four curators carried the accessioned items out of the cellar in archival foam boxes at sundown, and the wire cleared at the Larimer County Farmers Bank on the morning of the 15th of November. That afternoon, the 15th of November, Meredith sat in the office of Mrs. Cordelia Bevington at the Larimer County Farmers Bank in Fort Collins. Mrs. Bevington had been the branch manager of the Larimer County Farmers Bank for 31 years. She showed Meredith a printed wire receipt. $6,200,000. Mrs. Bevington folded the receipt and slid it across the desk. Then she said the words she had been holding for 31 years. "There is one more thing your grandfather asked me to tell you when this day came." Mrs. Bevington opened a small Larimer County Farmers Bank leather-bound ledger of her own and turned it around for Meredith to read. The ledger was a record of 47 separate small deposits, one per winter, beginning on the 15th of February 1973 and ending on the 15th of February 2015, into a single savings account in the name of the Larimer County Heritage Rocky Mountain Silversmithing Trust. Each deposit was the cash proceeds of a single sale of a single gold coin through a Denver numismatic intermediary. Each deposit was between $470 and $880. The trust had transferred the cumulative total every year to the Fort Lewis College Southwest Studies program in Durango. The trust had funded 47 full Fort Lewis College scholarships in Heritage Rocky Mountain, silversmithing, and engraving. Each scholarship was named for a Larimer County family. Each Larimer County family was one of the original 47 of 1933. 47 Fort Lewis College scholars across 42 years had been quietly paid for by one gold coin from a tin box in a fieldstone cellar on Blackwater Creek Road, sold every February by Meredith's grandfather, Walter Holloway, until 2015 when his hands became too shaky to make the drive down to Denver. Meredith laid her hand flat on the ledger. She did not cry. In the year that followed the wire, Meredith reopened the Holloway Silversmith Cabin on Blackwater Creek Road. She hand-engraved and hand-restored 47 pieces of Larimer County heritage silver for 47 Larimer County mountain families who came, by word of mouth alone, up the dirt track to the cabin door. Bridle bits, spurs, saddle silver, buckles, and a small handful of Great War veterans' silver identification pieces from families who had preserved them for 100 years. She did not charge any of them. She restored them the way Amos had restored them in 1933. She brought 4 Fort Lewis College Southwest Studies scholars to apprentice at the cabin one Saturday a month. She wrote the 48th undertaking in the 1898 Methodology Manual, undertaking the same promise upon the death of her grandfather on the 17th of April, 2026. The Library of Congress American Folklife Center entered a perpetual partnership with the Holloway Silversmith Cabin for 47 Heritage Rocky Mountain silversmithing workshops per year, at $2,300 per workshop across a 10-year contract. She bought back 2 of the Poudre River ranch tracts her sister Vivienne had begun to sell in June. She did not tell Vivienne. She bought them through Mr. Whitcomb at the closing. She rented one tract back to a young Larimer County rancher who had been priced out by Vivienne's listings. She set his monthly rent $200 below Larimer County market rate. The other tract she put into a perpetual conservation easement with the Poudre River Land Trust. Her sister did not call her after the wire. Vivienne did not come to the cabin. Vivienne did not ask Meredith what was beneath the chestnut floor. Vivienne never found out about the promise. The promise had never been recorded anywhere outside the walls of that cellar. The promise was in the hand that learned, in the hand that taught, in the hand that came after. That summer, Meredith began to expect Mr. Elias Trumbull on Saturday afternoons. Mr. Trumbull was 80 years old. He had been the Red Feather Lakes postmaster from 1970 until 2010. He had delivered the Holloway Silversmith Cabin's mail for 40 years. He had 38 hand-engraved Larimer County silver keepsakes in his back room in Red Feather Lakes, each one a Christmas-engraved gift Walter had given him for delivering the year's mail. He drove a dark forest green 1970 GMC Sierra pickup he had bought new in 1970. He brought his wife's plum jam and a basket of morning-baked buttermilk biscuits every Saturday. He sat on the front step of the cabin in the late afternoon Colorado summer light, and he and Meredith ate biscuits and plum jam and drank coffee from the iron range pot. And he told her stories about her grandfather Walter that her own father had never told her. Meredith did not pay Mr. Trumbull for his Saturday visits. Mr. Trumbull did not expect to be paid. He said only, when she asked him once at the end of an autumn afternoon what she could ever do for him, "Just bring me coffee, Mary. Just bring me coffee." There is a thing about the trade our grandfathers teach us to keep. It is not a thing of the will. It is not a thing of the attorney's cracked leather chair or the manila folder atop his walnut. It is not a thing of the older sister in her black tailored blazer and her Cartier watch, and her downtown Denver corporate real estate partnership. The trade is the hand that learned, the hand that teaches, and the hand that comes after. The trade is itself the trade. We do not always know what is hand-engraved for us in the fieldstone cellar of an old Rocky Mountain silversmith cabin on Blackwater Creek Road. We do not always know what is sealed in deep red wax beneath a chestnut trap door 2 feet south of an engraver's bench. We do not always know what is the small hand-forged engraving burin at the front of our grandfather's leather apron. What her sister did not get does not have a price on it. What she did not get was the hand that learned at the heart pine engraver's bench, at the dead center spot of a chestnut workshop floor, in a 127-year-old silversmith cabin on Blackwater Creek Road. What she did not get was the small hand-forged engraving baron passed down through 4 generations of Holloway silversmiths. What she did not get was the deep red wax seal of the crossed engraving burin and silver marking punch on the inside edge of a chestnut trap door. What she did not get was the promise that was made in the worst Colorado winter of 1933 to 47 Larimer County mountain families who could not afford to lose the heritage silver of their forebears. What she did not get was the 92-year-old hand that had been carrying that promise across 4 generations. What she did not get was the only thing that mattered. He had been teaching us, our grandfather had been teaching us all along. He had been teaching us at the engraver's bench. He had been teaching us at the heart pine work table in the cellar. He had been teaching us in the slow, careful Colorado script of the 1898 methodology manual. He had been teaching us in the deep red wax seal of the crossed engraving burin and silver marking punch. He had been teaching us in the small engraving burin at the front of the leather apron. We had not always understood that the teaching was in progress, but the teaching had continued all the same. The teaching was the trade. The teaching is the trade. The teaching will be the trade for as long as our hands can still hold an engraving burin and our crucible can still melt sterling. And in the end, that is the only inheritance worth anything at all. Not the Holloway Ranch in the Poudre River Valley, not the Vail ski house, not the Vanguard portfolio, not the Range Rover or the Land Cruiser, the hand that learned, the hand that teaches, the hand that comes after. Meredith Ellery Holloway, 25 years old, the youngest, the hand that came after, sat on the cedar shingle-covered front step of the Holloway Silversmith Cabin on Blackwater Creek Road in the last hour of daylight in mid-October. She wore her heavy oatmeal cream wool cardigan. A wool ranch quilt was draped over her shoulders. A tin cup of coffee rested in both her hands. The small, hand-forged engraving burin from her grandfather's leather apron was in the breast pocket of her wool workshirt against her chest. The salt gold light of the late October Colorado high country afternoon lay across the rolling Blackwater Ridge across the road. The aspens up the long curve of the cabin dirt track had turned the deep saffron of mid-October Colorado. Behind her, through the tall, narrow north-facing engraver's light window, a warm amber kerosene lamplight caught the polished heart pine engraver's bench and the pegs of Walter's silversmithing tools inside. The smell of beeswax and hand-oiled leather and pine pitch was in the cool October air. Far in the distance, up the long curve of Blackwater Creek Road, a single dark forest green 1970 GMC Sierra pickup came slowly down the dirt track. Mr. Trumbull was coming for his Saturday biscuits. It was the best $1 she ever spent. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell us in the comments, has anyone in your family ever quietly carried a kindness like that, one nobody else knew about? We would love to read your stories. It helps us keep making them. See you on the next Quiet Road.